Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Oh, crawl out. Hear that? Hear that? That's morning. Crawl out through the fallout, baby, when they drop that bomb. Crawl out through the fallout with the greatest of aplomb. When your white count's getting high, hurry, don't delay. I'll hold you close and kiss those radiation burns away. Crawl out through the fallout, baby, to my loving arms. Through the rain of strontium-90. Think about your hero when you're at ground zero. And crawl out through the fallout straight back to me. The next verse is my favorite. Crawl out through the fallout, baby. You know what I mean. Crawl out through the fallout, 'cause they said this bomb was clean. If you cannot find the way, just listen for my song. I love you all your life, although that may not be too long. Crawl out through the fallout, baby, to my loving arms, while those ICBMs keep us free. Oh, think about your hero when you're at ground zero. And crawl out through the fallout straight back to me. 'Cause you'll be the only girl in the world. Why don't you crawl out through the fallout straight back to me? Are you familiar with this song?
No, that was great though.
My singing voice is a little off this morning because I just woke up and I got a little drainage.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That was the great Sheldon Allman wrote that song in the 70s, maybe.
So it was like a protest song?
No, it was Sheldon Allman was just the original. I don't know, what would you call him? The original troll. He wrote an album called Folk Songs for the 21st Century. In like 1970s, and it had some that beautiful songs on it. That one was on the Fallout games.
Mm-hmm.
I think Fallout 4, but like there was one, radioactive mama, treat me right. It was done in the style of the 50s, like a sock out. Radioactive mama, hold me tight. Boom boom. Radioactive mama will reach critical mass tonight. It was great. And there was one called Big Brother, where he had this line that said, and when you watch that TV screen, remember it looks both ways. And all the things that were all the changes that were happening in the 60s and 70s. He just wrote about it.
He's like a humorist and a prophet, man.
He was great. There was one song on there called Schizophrenic Baby. Because schizophrenia had just been a thing that was just diagnosed,
Right.
And it was schizophrenic baby. I love both of you. And then he was schizo too in the song. And there was one about a love triangle or a love between a univac and a humanoid robot.
Mm.
And the univac was as big as in the song is as big as a city block. And so his love can never be consummated with the humanoid robot,
Oh.
even though they're in love. There's also some great classics like Girl from the Fourth Dimension, It Conquered the World. And that was the only album he ever produced.
Well, you go out on top, right?
Huh?
You go out on top, right?
Yeah. I think he was like a minor TV person at some point, but he made some song and or album, and the cover is him in like a spacesuit sitting on top of Sputnik with a guitar,
Nice.
and it was good times. But I was singing that one. That's been on my mind because number 15 has informed me that he is seriously thinking about allowing. Number 15 actually pulls the strings.
Right. Yeah.
The CEO of Earth. He is thinking of allowing a full-scale war between the United States and China.
Sweet. Well, that should be fun.
So the thing we differ on, he was asking me for my advice on whether he should do this, and I said, well, you got to consider, I don't think the U.S. is going to win
Right.
this war, and I brought that up, and he thinks no, the U.S. has it in the bag.
Well, in what theater would it be fought? On what continent?
Well, it's starting in the South China Sea.
Okay.
It was starting in the South China Sea.
Well, we have a lot better ability to project power than they do. They don't have a navy.
That is the standard reasoning. But
Right.
everyone, I feel, is not aware of how much better the Chinese missile capability is than ours.
Well, that's a good point.
Not just a little bit better, like a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Like unless we have things that are like number 15 says, oh, the U.S. has some stuff that's secret.
Right.
It's like, yeah, but the Chinese have some stuff that's secret too, and their not secret stuff is better than our not secret stuff.
So how do you know?
Well, they have some missiles. Well, so for one, in 2007, China deployed for the whole world to see its own. They have a surface to low Earth orbit missile.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which we don't have, to anybody's knowledge. In 2007, they had this. They set up and they destroyed their own weather satellite. And everyone was like,
from the
hey,
surface.
Yeah, they destroyed their own weather satellite on purpose, just as a target. They sent it up there. It's like, it's a weather satellite, and then, but its real purpose was to be a target for this test.
Right. No, but they hit it with a missile from the surface. That's pretty. I mean, that's legit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a legit thing. So the missile goes up and it blows up the thing, and the whole world's like, China, what are you doing? That's a pretty advanced missile. And China's response was, our literally in the report they gave, our missiles only produce happiness for the world. It's something they said, and then they said that our missiles only produce happiness for the world, and that is just there to we're testing a means of blowing up space debris to get rid of space debris. And everyone's like, but you just made like 70 shards of satellite metal hurling at rapid speeds to the orbit. And they said, we make only happy shards.
Right. Shards of happiness.
Shards of happiness. And the other thing that goes along with that is the Chinese. I don't pronounce Chinese words well.
That's okay.
I have a friend named Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
His name's not actually Merlin, but I don't want to say his name. But it's very, very close to Merlin, and he speaks Chinese. He's the whitest guy you could imagine, but he's fluent in Chinese. But he always rattles off these Chinese words, and I'm amazed at his ability to instantly transform into a small Asian woman in San Francisco. Because he just is like, what? It's like, what was that? It's like if you ever walked into Chinatown and there's some Asian lady mad at you for walking through the wrong aisle.
Asian ladies love me. I've never experienced that.
Oh, see, I walk through a lot of wrong aisles.
Oh, I see.
Both in standard Western stores and also in in Chinatown, the aisles are poorly defined.
Are they
segregated? I always end up in the back, like behind the curtain.
Okay.
With the little cat waving its paw,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the money and it dumps it in, and then that's. But anyway, they always get upset with me, and he can sound like that. But anyway, I can't sound like that. But I think it's called Baidu or Baidu. Anyway, it's their version of GPS. Everyone in the world except for China uses the American GPS system, but they have launched their fully on and it's fully functional now Baidu system, which is a newer and better GPS system because ours is old now.
Well, Russia has the GLONASS system, don't they?
Yeah, but
we kind of share
it
it.
doesn't do all the same stuff.
Right.
It's pretty close, but it's not like a direct competitor, like on the same level. But the Baidu system is better than the GPS system because the GPS system is like 30 years old now.
Yeah.
And all the satellites are old. And so here's what you got to imagine. So war starts, U.S. and China, right? China just launches like a couple of hundred of their surface to low Earth orbit missiles, destroys the GPS system. Then what are we going to do?
Yeah, because people don't know how to read maps anymore.
Well, not only that, but a lot of our missiles are guided by GPS.
Really? By GPS?
Oh, yeah.
I would think they would have a better system than that.
Oh no, a lot. Well, some of them do if they're local. But if you want to like a cross several thousand-mile missile,
yeah,
it uses GPS for targeting. And so that was one of the reasons GPS was invented was long-range targeting. And so if you knock that out and they have their own system, then they have long-range targeting and we don't.
Ooh.
They also have these little. Which apparently Motorola helped them with. They also have these little satellites that go up, and they have little robot satellites that come out of them, like little board things, and they can move, and they have little arms on them, and they can go up and grab a satellite and just sort of break stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is why the Space Force is a thing now. People think it's a meme,
right?
But it's the U.S. realized how far behind they were in low Earth orbit warfare.
I see.
Because we're actually quite far behind low Earth orbit warfare. We don't have little pinching arm satellite robots. And so that you got that. And then also there are just long range terrestrial missiles go farther than ours. So people are like, well, we have all the aircraft carriers. And it's like, yeah, but they have 2,500 mile range ballistic missiles in the thousands. And so the aircraft carrier is not going to be able to get close. I mean, think about it.
Right.
One missile on the surface of you don't need to sink the aircraft carrier. You just hit the runway, and then it's useless.
Yeah.
It's a big piece of floating metal, and that missile costs $10 million, and the aircraft carrier costs $30 billion, and that's a trade China make every day. $10 million to destroy $30 billion.
That's a good point.
Right. So I think now, can China invade the United States properly? Probably not. But our ability to stop them from taking over the South China Sea is probably gone.
So then in the American calculation, would we even fight that war? Or just...
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was talking to number 15 about. I think that's why they gave up Hong Kong so easily.
Yeah.
Because they were like, well, used to that's one of the signs that it wouldn't go well is because everyone was like, well, there's nothing we can do about Hong Kong. Like, what do you mean there's nothing we can do? It's like, well, if we send in stuff, they'll just shoot it down. That was a clear sign that China is, China does not have the firepower that we do by any stretch of the means, but they've developed asymmetrical war technologies to try and neutralize some of ours and have been successful at it. So then the only option you got to next is then if it gets that bad, then you just start shooting nuclear missiles.
Right. You got to go straight to the top level.
Who wants to do that? Because there's a lot of problems with that. I mean, you saw how much people freaked out with just that Beirut bomb. Which
I think John McCain still wants to do that. He's, even though he's dead, he's probably like, launch him. Yeah.
Well, John Bolton, every night, he fantasizes about just turning millions and millions of brown people into dust.
I don't doubt it.
With his mustache, and then he thinks about all the little particles getting collected in his mustache.
Right.
and then like licking them off. And that's his main thing. But yeah, I mean, the Beirut bomb was big, and I don't know if it was a bomb or not. Maybe. What do you think about that? Was that a bomb, or was that just an
I think it
industrial
was just
accident?
negligence.
Could be either way. People are like, that's not how industrial accidents go. Like, there's been some, like there was one about 10 years ago here in the States.
It's
It
in
was a
Texas. Yeah, it was a fertilizer plant.
fertilizer plant, and I don't think many people were injured in it because they burned for long enough. They all evacuated.
And it was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but it was big enough that like some people were like watching it and it exploded and they lost their hearing like on the video.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it blew out windows of that car. I've seen the same video you're talking about. It blew the windows out of that car like miles away. The shockwave did. So, I mean, that stuff is no joke. So if you put 2,700 tons of it on the ground, it's not going to mess around. Well, we lost you.
Come on, man. Get a life.
And we're back after a brief
Yeah, the
interruption.
NWO was attacking us for they don't want us revealing China's trade secret.
No, I think you're right because I was on Boiler Room Thursday night, and all my stuff.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it went good. It was a lot of fun. But my connection got shut down like right in the middle of the show. All my internets went out the window. We were talking about like Pizzagate stuff, and
they do this. I think they have bots. They have deep fake bots.
Yeah.
That listen to podcast streams.
Yeah.
And when they detect words like China's gonna win or Bodai or pizza with the word gate, they send out their satellite gravity arm robots and they grab your satellites.
Yeah,
scramble
probably
your bits.
Well, I would expect that on Boiler Room because it's a live broadcast and a pre-recorded and then they distribute it.
Right.
But it's a live stream. We're not even recording live. We still got nuked.
Well, that's what you think.
We're
recording live all the time.
Excellent. Well, hello to all our listeners out there in live internet land.
But our live listeners are only in Thailand.
Okay. Well, I think now would be a good time to do a little housekeeping. Like I said, you can catch me on the most recent episode of Boiler Room over at Alternate Current Radio. You can go say hi to Hesher and Spore over there. Give them some support. They do.
Which one's the girl?
Spore. And Hesher is the metalhead, and so they do some pretty cool alternative media work over there. You can catch me on Twitter at SMKSTCK1, and I believe you are at Frog Troubadour. Is that right?
That's correct. I've been thinking about 2 + 2 = 5. That was a meme that went around. Do you remember that? Did you see this meme?
Well, I saw it, but I thought I'm not going to take the time to understand what all this is about, and I sort of passed it over.
Well, so this was a thing that was being promulgated on internet world by, let's say, semi-prominent people. Blue check marks. Mm-hmm. People on Twitter that have blue check marks. Journalists, pundits, a few academics. No one famous.
Right.
But like people that, they determine what is the content of a lecture series at a university somewhere. That sort of person. Mm-hmm. Right. And they were having all these things and they were going around telling each other, hey, there was this thing. I don't know what started it. Someone said 2 + 2 may sometimes equal 5 or something. And then they were all like, someone was like, this is a sign of the degradation of the American education. Someone was like, oh, I just was a sign of the American educational system. Yeah. That's what Rush Limbaugh said. That's my Rush Limbaugh impression.
Oh, okay.
And then other people, and then people were like, oh, rather than like be like, if I heard that statement, I would ask what their terms meant rather than just dunking on the degradation of the Western educational system. And of course, 2 + 2 sometimes does equal 5, and 2 + 2 doesn't always equal 4, and blah, blah, blah. Everyone was going insane because it appeared that the latest thing is just to attack actual math itself. Mm. Like, let's go off. No, we're not content to continue to make irrational arguments. Let's attack reason itself, which of course they are doing. That is a correct assumption.
Right.
But I wanted to explain to people why you're going to see that and what it is about. So, in future, which is how the British say it, the British like to drop the plot. It's not, you don't go to the hospital, you go to hospital.
It sounds classy.
Huh?
It sounds classy.
It does. I've started doing that. In future, you will see a lot more arguments and a lot more people in the political class and in the media saying things that just seem completely irrational, right? And it's because one of the false things that people do is they assume that a lot of this stuff has some sort of like rational motive behind it, and they assume like, oh, they have some legitimate reason even if they've gone too far. But you have to understand this is all motivated by basically Derrida and deconstructionism. Which deconstructionism was a philosophy, which is, I mean, it's not wholly wrong, but it gained a lot of popularity in the latter half of the 20th century, especially among the people that consider themselves the upper class,
right?
Which is that words only have meaning within a societal context. Therefore, all meaning is socially conditioned. Therefore, all truth is relative. Right? And so when they say things like, so they will bring up things like alternative math. And you think, how can you have alternative math? Right? And they'll be like, well, if you have one river and it flows in another river and they flow together, you get one river. So 1 + 1 = 1. Because they don't make two rivers. You have two flow together into one. Or they'll be like, if you have 2 apples plus 2 oranges, you don't have 4 oranges. You have 4 objects, maybe, but not 4 oranges. So you still have 2 and 2. So 2 + 2 = 2 is 2 and 2. Yeah, but
that's not math at all. That's just taxonomy.
Well, yes. And so then you go on further, and they'll be like, well, it depends on what the 2 means. Maybe in this situation, the 2 stands for 3. Like, well, we would consider 3 objects, and we just use the symbol 2 to be, and so what they're doing is they want to. It's born out of hatred and spite.
Yeah,
like you have to understand this ideology is born out of hatred and spite. But what they do is they attack the base common and unexamined, unexplained assumptions behind meaning. So when you say, so in everything you do, you think every bit of reason that you have, you think, well, this is rational. But if you examine it, there's always some point you can't explain, which is the basis of Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorem. That he sort of proved this mathematically. There's that, and if you try to explain it, actually you lose the rest of it. Right. And it's this idea of this remainder. Like there always has to be something left unexplained because you can't. No system is fully accountable for itself. So they'll say things like, "Well, why is?" And you're right. It comes down to this idea of taxonomy because you say like, "Well, you have one river and one river equals one river," right?
Right.
But that is assuming that the thing you're trying to add is the number of rivers.
Right.
Right. And so they attack the taxonomy, like what they attack where it's a question of ontology, like what is something and what is not something. This is all a question of challenging ontology, like what is being? Because this is why you can say like, oh, sometimes boys are girls.
Right.
And sometimes there are no genders. It's like, what is a thing? Right. That's the base attack. And a lot of people have never thought about what a thing is. And a lot of people have a lot of trouble defining what a thing is, right? And so you can attack that easily because it's not clear how to define what is something and what is not something. Right?
This is really kind of a form of like psychological abuse rather than a philosophy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, but to avoid it, you have to understand its attack. So
absolutely.
So the one river plus the one river being one river, it's like, well, that's true. It forms one big river, but the math properly applied would be like on something like the volume of water, right? So if you have 40,000 gallons of water in this one and 30,000 in that one, then the new river will have 70,000 gallons, right?
Right.
And that's where that math. So your logos is taking the and it does this without really thinking about it. That's the point. Like you don't like go through and like, well, where do I apply the math at? What's the proper unit of evaluation? You don't ever do that. You just like, well, obviously, it's not one and one is. That's not what you add, right? It would be something like the volume of water, or maybe the number of gallons, and so that's where your logos breaks down the world and applies the math. And they say, well, your logos of where you break down the world is wrong, and you should actually break it down this way, right? That's why that's where this attack of like gender ideology and like there are no races except that we also have to pander to every race. That's where it all comes from, because it's like, well, the way you're breaking down the world is wrong, right? And a different culture could do it a different way. And the thing about this that you have to get is that this is 100% true. And and you really, I've had to think about this because I think about aliens a lot.
Sure, like we do.
We all think about aliens, but you got to think. So, like, if aliens had different bodies, they would interpret the world in a different way. So, example: imagine you're like a fly. We don't have to go extraterrestrial for this. Just imagine an intelligent fly. Well, if you're an intelligent fly that can walk on every surface, maybe in your culture you don't have mental divisions between like floor and wall and ceiling.
Right.
Because it's all the same. You can sit on all of it. You can sleep on all of it. You can eat from all of it, right? And so it doesn't. And so if you were an extraterrestrial being who, I don't know, was a goo or a slime or had inherent biological anti-gravitic properties, like I don't know, then the way that you would walk into a room and slice it up into different parts in your mind would be different, right? And and so what the deconstructionists are saying is that, well, because that's true, then that invalidates all knowledge because it could all be different. And then you have to say, how do I get around that? Because that's a very like it goes so down to like because most people throughout just assume like floor is floor. And they're like, aha, but now show your work that floor is floor. And you're like, well, I don't know how to show my work that floor is floor, floor is floor. This is why, for most normal people, the most effective argument of this is just to slap them in the face.
Yeah.
It's like that thing. It's like Zeno's paradox. You remember Zeno's paradox?
No.
Or Zeno. Was it Zeno? I've been thinking about Scientology too much. I think it was, now I'm saying Zeno. Zeno. Zeno was a Greek philosopher, and he had this paradox where he said, well, look, you shoot an arrow through the air, right? Well, actually, that was a different one. He was like, look, imagine there's a race between Achilles and a tortoise, and the tortoise gets a halfway head start. It's like, who's going to win? And everyone's like, well, Achilles. He's like, but think about it. So in order to first get to where the tortoise is, you first have to walk. Achilles first has to run halfway between himself and the tortoise. And in that time, the tortoise will go in a little bit. And then it's like, and then Achilles has to get halfway between Achilles and the tortoise again. And then he has to get halfway again. And then if you think about it, he has to go an infinite number of distances. And an infinite number of distances must therefore be an infinite distance in length. And then most people are like, well, I don't understand how that's true, but I don't see the fault in it either. And shut up, Zeno.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and I don't think he was proposing these things. I think what Zeno was doing at the time, when I read him, is he was saying like, oh, you think you understand things? Like, what if we just see if you can actually explain the most basic of things, like how you walk across the room, right? And there was a movie where someone did this to Tom Hanks. I think it was Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks was like a blue-collar guy and not an in real life sexual predator. Uh, but anyway, I don't know. I just, I have no proof. But anyway, he and Tom Hanks's character responds by simply walking across the room, and he's like, "Well, there you go."
Yeah.
Right. So I did it. But to a lot of people that really want, this is a persuasive argument because it allows people to break down everything, and then it allows them to feel no moral guilt for the bad things they want to do.
Right.
Because the ultimate purpose of this is they break down things simple as math and like gender and like, can you even walk across the room, so that they can say things like, well, then all of your morality statements are also just made up and anything goes.
That's the point right there, is they're trying to break down your morality so that you'll debase yourself.
Right. And they do this by getting you to question basically everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. Now here's how you have to pay attention to how they word things. Right. This is how to fight postmodernism 101.
Right.
So they never say 2 + 2 does not equal 4. They never say that. They say 2 + 2 sometimes does not equal 4, and 2 + 2 may sometimes equal 5. So it's all this like conditional, like it depends on your conditions. And the thing is, mathematicians have known this for ages, right? This isn't like quote unquote not true.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does, like, your symbols do matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, does the drawing of a 2 that you make actually stand for 2 objects? And you think, well, yes, it would be dumb for it not to. And that's true, except sometimes you can make other number-based systems. So example, the one that we all commonly use is base 10.
Yep.
However, my favorite, of course, is base 12, because it's just better. And to do that, so you go, so in that system, right, you need 2 more digits because you've gone up to 10, and then it doesn't turn back over until you get to what is 13. Right. So it would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you need something like, sometimes they use an upside down 2. But actually, I'm sorry, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then upside down 2, then backwards 3. That's the most common one. So, and the upside down 2 stands for 10. And the upside down 3, and the backwards 3 stands for 11. And then 1, 0 is 12. And that way it keeps going around in a circle. Because you go 1, 0, and then you have 20, but 20 would actually be 24, right? And the Dosnell, people are like, that's confusing. But again, to go back to the argument of the deconstructionist, it's not really if you grew up with that system.
Right.
It makes total sense. And it is more useful. That's why the Babylonians used base 12 and base 60. That's why the clock is base 12.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and base 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 12 hours in a half a day, 24. And base 12 was the standard for the ancient world. That's why there are 12 inches in a foot. All this is 12. That's why 12 was a holy number in the Bible. And the reason is because 12 is easier to work with in your mind. Because it has more factors.
Yep.
So 10 you can divide easily by 5 and 2, but 12 you can divide easily by 3, 4, 6, and 2. Right? So you can do more divisions in your mind easier. Mm-hmm. That's why we should write a book sometime called Long Live the Mile, about the follies of the metric system. Mm-hmm. Because I'm against the metric system in every way. But that's why. But in Europe, carpenters go and they get boards, right, 2x4s, and they are 120 centimeters long. I'm sorry, yeah. So it's like base 12 again. They could chop it off of a meter, but it's easier to do like work if you can divide things up easier.
Right.
And so it would be totally possible to have a system where 1, 0 equals 12 rather than 10. Right? That's true. It's fine. That's just a symbolical syntax thing. And mathematicians have done that for ages. You also do that in binary systems. 1, 0 in binary does not equal 10.
Right.
So that's a common thing. But also, it's you're playing dumb if you're pretending like in common parlance, when someone says 2 and 2, they're not using base 10. When something is so common, if you're going to say, but for this calculation, I'm using a different number system, then you have to state that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's fair. You just have to say, okay. So that's one of their things. It's like, yeah, mathematicians have known that forever. And then 2 is the 1 + 1 = 1 river thing. It's like, yeah, that's also true. Mathematicians have also thought about that for a while, and that's in the philosophy of math, and like where you break down what is a thing that you're counting and what isn't. Because math is just about counting things. It's fancy ways to count things. All calculus is a really complex way to count how much area is under a curve.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's really effective at doing this hard problem, but it's just counting. But then, so the question the postmodernist attacks is, well, are you counting the right thing? And then people are like, well, I haven't thought about that. Like, am I counting the right thing? Like, how do I know what a thing is? And it's so annoying because you really can't explain it without like being a little super nerdy.
It sounds like a conversation between Screwtape and Wormwood.
It is, but the problem is it's been effective at infiltrating our university system and affecting the way elite people think.
Right.
Quote unquote elite people. And so the answer to this is, of course, it's like what I talked about last time. It's like, well, you divide up the world. The world is divided up by your consciousness, by your logos, depending on your goal. Right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to walk to the end of the room, it divides the world up into obstacles to getting to the end of the room and things that are not obstacles. Right? And then you count the things that are obstacles, and you count the things like you know, if you want to get to the end of the room and there's a bunch of cords in your way, then all of a sudden your mind counts those cords. It does math. It counts those cords as obstacles. But otherwise, if you want to sit in your chair, those things are non-entities. Right?
Right.
And this is why your goal has to be, this is why the proper way to break down the world, because all science does and all language does is it breaks down the world into individual parts that we can manage, is you have to have the right goal. If your goal is, I want to chop people's penises off and pretend like it's progress, or pretend that burning down cities is somehow peaceful, then if that's your goal, then you're going to reorient the world into ways that your language describes it that is just. Right? But if your goal is to get to God, then you reorient the world in the proper way.
Yeah.
So that's how you do that, because you gotta understand that like the argument isn't wrong, because I mean it's dumb, because it just means that your aim is so far off that you want to do things like make 2 and 2 not be 5. But it's not like strictly speaking wrong, and then to like try to understand why it's wrong. But for most people, if you don't understand it, if someone does that to you, just spit in their face and it'll be fine. Because that's basically what they're doing to you.
Yeah.
They're just not in a different way. They're like, well, did you me? I know you think that like love is good, but have you defined good?
Right.
And what is love? And then unfortunately, those of us wishing to fight that have to. This is the problem. There's so much. Like, I don't blame guys for getting black-pilled a little bit. You know, because at the moment in time, we have to be like greater philosophers than anyone that's ever lived to try and figure this stuff out. Because people are just so confused, and you're like, well, why don't you just justify the basics of sense experience?
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
They're asking a lot more than people are prepared to give for the most part.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's easy to do when your goal is to destroy and not to create and build up, which is what their goal is.
And, you know, I've been wondering, like, why do people tolerate, like, here's where I get, sometimes I think maybe it's not, in my less cynical moments, I think maybe there's like a grain of like mercy here. for the reason it's being tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do wonder, like when they maybe I doubt this, but maybe people in power realize that this show is going to come to an end, and so they're trying to give people a story that allows them to feel okay about it. They know that all of the spurring up identity politics in a country with a very heterogeneous population is not going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe they've been noticing this for a while. They've been aware for this for like 30 years. And maybe there's a portion in the CIA that's doing its evil. It's like, well, look, to save the lives, we need to just get rid of the guns. Because that way when the war breaks out, it won't be as bloody. And then if we can just get rid of the firearms now, we'll save lives. So maybe we'll do a few hoaxes. Maybe we'll pretend to kill some kids in Sandy Hook, and then we'll try to get them to give up their guns, and that'll be better in 20 years when the war starts. Or like, and this is why, there's this push. Have you seen all the push to eat bugs?
Yes.
Not eat meat?
Man. Yeah.
But see, that's because everyone's gonna be poor.
Yeah.
Right. The Ponzi scheme is running out, and it is a Ponzi scheme. Like. This is why we had to have illegal immigration. It's because this idea, like, after World War II, they were like, look, you're going to get a job, you're going to get a pension, which means after you quit working, we still going to pay you, which is weird. And you're going to have Social Security and Medicaid, and property values are going to go up forever, and it's going to be great. Mm-hmm. But how do you get property values to go up forever if you don't have more? You have to have more people. It's like a pyramid scheme. The people under you have to be more numerous than you.
Yeah.
So if the baby boomers didn't have more babies than themselves, then you have to import some. Otherwise, the property values start going down. And the entire banking system is built on the mortgage values.
Yep.
The whole thing, right? Like the value of the US dollar is intrinsically linked to housing prices, real estate. So, because that's where most of the bank's money is in mortgages. Well, so then you have to make housing demand go up. So you bring in more people that don't have houses. And now the homeless problem goes up. But then the homeless people need to eat. And so then you say, well, we can't all have meat anymore. Mm-hmm. Why don't we really push vegetarianism? It's going to make them like, we'll be like, hey guys, is it really good to kill animals? We'll give them this story to make them feel good about accepting their poverty. Or maybe it's a story people are telling themselves to feel better about their poverty. I don't know. Or because a lot of this is people just don't want to face pain.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, maybe this is good somehow. And, if you got to eat a few bugs, the counselors have eaten bugs before, and it's not that bad. Make it taste good. Yeah, make it taste good. And I know that hey, isn't living in a van kind of chic? That's what the hashtag van life thing is like. Everyone get out there and live in, and you'll see all these sexy young people out on the beach in a van. They got a surfboard on top.
Yep. They're
drinking their coffee in the morning before they go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And that's not the reality of van life for most people. And I support van life. I like I like having a mobile house. Mm-hmm. Like a very nimble, like not an RV, but like a very nimble van that can go on off roads. And also it has a bed in there if you need to, and maybe solar panels. But that shouldn't be what most people are forced into.
Right.
But they're gonna be, and they are. Like if you go out and you talk to these people that live in vans, most of them are not sexy young people.
No.
Most of them have very tragic stories. Like I would say the median age for it is probably 60 plus. Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, it's older people. This isn't to say that they aren't having their own kind of sexy time out there in their vans, because they are, and it's a little creepy. But the it's someone with the classic story is like some guy, and he's out, or some lady, either one, and they're out there and they're like, well, we worked hard and we saved money, but then my husband got sick and we just burned through all of our savings in the last 5 years of his life with his medical bills. And then I couldn't afford the house, and, my hip's out now. And so I just couldn't make the payments anymore. And I just sold it and lived in a van. That's the common story. It's not like someone doing it to be chic and go
Right.
practice yoga on the mountaintop.
Right.
And practicing yoga on the mountaintop is great. It's fun, but that's not why most people are there.
Mm-hmm.
But see, most people are gonna be there soon.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, this is a good business tip. If you want to know where the big growth sectors are in the future, it's providing things for people living in their cars. If you can make some sort of product for car people, and the other one is private security.
Yeah. Yeah.
To protect against all the homeless people that want the stuff that isn't in cars. So if you can form a private security firm, which I wouldn't do because I don't like to work late, like in the middle of the night, which is when private security is like, I don't want to be up at 2 a.m.
Yeah, it's not natural. Yeah.
Pointing a gun at homeless people. But it's a good way to make money these days. And then the other one is just, providing things like homeless people have so many interesting needs. And the thing I like about it is, this is why I was wondering, this is why I wonder if sometimes it's benevolent to try and give people a story to feel better, is because these people living in their cars always, almost to a fault, rationalize it to where they're super happy. And they have to as a survival mechanism, right?
And like deconstructionism and postmodernism gives them the rational tools to celebrate impoverishment.
Yeah. It's like, well, why is it better than that? Why is having something better than nothing? And you're like, well, that's a good point. And I don't have anything, so maybe I'll go with it. The reason it could take off is because a lot of people are just going downhill fast.
Yeah.
And deconstructionism allows them a way to feel better about it. It's like, well, it's like, well, most the number of men finding wives these days is very, very thin.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of women finding husbands is similarly thin because everyone's broken and broke.
Yeah.
Everyone's broken and broke. And so then they say, well, maybe just being gay is the same. And that's easier.
Right.
because there's always some guy willing to accept your sexual advances, and you don't get rejected. And so maybe that's just easier, and maybe it's the same. And this deconstructionism allows me to feel good about it, and that's really driving a lot of it. It's just people, it's all going downhill, and people want to feel good about eating bugs and living in a pod and having nothing. And they have to some degree. Like those guys out in the van, they're like, you have to make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't fault them too much.
But also, if you have no philosophical drive to something higher and better, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Like there's no way out. If you're celebrating your impoverishment, there's no way out of it.
Correct. So you have to, yeah. It's just sad. But guys, the modern thing where the media is always lying. And so I realized the other day, I was like, because that's depressing. You're like, oh, it's like it's always been true.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been true. Helen Keller didn't write her books. You guys crazy? Someone brought this up on Twitter yesterday, and I was like, of course he didn't. I never thought about that. You grew up reading about Helen Keller, and it's like, oh, she wrote all these things, and and someone was like, she never did anything after Anne Sullivan died. None of this fancy stuff happened.
Yeah.
There were no more books. There was no more going to college after Anne Sullivan died and stopped doing all the work for her, because of course a blind and deaf girl can't write an articulate treatise on communism, which she just so happened to do. It was like all of her books were just supporting socialism and communism, and it just so happened that there's the same formula forever, guys. It's like find a sob story, and then use it to promote communism. And it's like obvious that she didn't. Of course, a blind and deaf girl didn't do all that. Anne Sullivan did it, claimed she did it, and Helen Keller was her Coco the gorilla.
Oh, that's so sad.
It is, but Coco, you remember Coco the gorilla? And
I
that girl was like,
do.
"Oh, you know sign language," and then everyone that actually knew sign language was like, vaguely, sort of the signs, maybe.
Right.
And she was like, "Well, I taught her own sign language." It's like, so it's a sign language only you know how to read. It's like, well, yeah, but Coco communicates very well in it. And then she was the only one that could ever tell you what Coco was saying was the lady that taught her the sign language. It's like, it's not, and then they purported it like this gorilla knowing all this sign language. That's the same as the Helen Keller story.
Yeah.
Helen Keller was the original Coco the gorilla.
So okay, now there's another theory on her. So which is it? Was she actually just Coco the gorilla for Anne Sullivan, or was she a theosophist? Or was Anne Sullivan the theosophist?
This is gonna sound rude, but I have known deaf people, right? And I know deaf people that communicate with sign language. And they do not have, when they text you, if they've been deaf their whole life, it's different for if they got deaf later in life. But if they've been deaf their whole life, if they text you on the phone, they text you in the same way that they sign.
Okay.
Similar to how people that text you basically how they speak.
So the sentence structure and stuff, and the grammar.
The sentence structure is all broken up, and it sounds very caveman-like. Because sign language, if you know any sign language, is not very precise.
Right.
There's a lot of context that has to be interpreted, and let me think of an example, like go and leave, and it's like go and leave and will go are all the same signs.
Right.
And so it's like, and that's with someone that can see.
Mm-hmm.
So then you take that amount of fine definition and you remove even the ability to see from it. And if Helen Keller wrote a book about socialism, it would be like money, need, get, we have, and that's what that would be. And I know that sounds mean.
Yeah.
You don't learn all the fine points of language and communication without hearing and seeing. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. So Anne Sullivan may have been a theosophist. I haven't looked into that. That's a brand new one for me. I wouldn't doubt it because I don't doubt anything at this point. but Helen Keller did not write those books. If she was one or the other, if she was deaf or blind, it would be possible.
Mm-hmm.
It would be more plausible if she was just deaf, because blind people can read fine, and they can type out. Because if you know how to read, you can communicate in written language.
Right.
Or not, I'm sorry, deaf rather. I said the wrong one, but you know what I mean. But and blind people can hear fine, so they can talk properly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're both, I don't know. It's just going to be like money need here, give some. Money need here, give. Money
Machine
money
gun,
need here.
Romanovs.
Bad me have money no.
Right.
That's what that would be, because that's how sign language sounds.
Right.
And did you remember Nelson Mandela's funeral?
No.
When that guy got up there, the guy, they had some, it was in Africa, and Nelson Mandela died, and this guy was giving a speech, and the guy next to him was this black guy, and he was doing sign language, to interpret. And everyone was like, none of those are signs. He's just waving his arms around.
Oh, are you kidding me?
No, it was fantastic. He kept going. He kept making this thing like a swooping bird, like whoo. He was like karate chopping his hands. He had obviously just told people that he knew sign language, and then got up in front of the whole world and was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna fake this." He's my hero. I want to know that guy's name, but I've never been able to figure it out.
That's awesome. He trolled Nelson Mandela's funeral.
Yeah, I mean, he was just like, "Yeah, I know sign language. I got it. Yeah." But yeah, so everyone's going to be poor, and that's why they push this on you, maybe, or maybe they're just sadistic.
Yeah.
And But that's why you gotta, like you were saying, you gotta have be aiming at God because
Right.
And the thing about it is, have you noticed like there's this perpetual like, well, let's just be transgressive to be transgressive,
Right.
and like you guys, I was thinking, this is so tiresome. You wanted to talk about your latest medical update, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I did have a little follow on. A few episodes ago, we talked about Artemisia annua as a potential COVID treatment. And even though this thing is seems to be winding down a little bit, in my view, there's still a lot of people getting it. I actually have a family member, not immediate, but a family member with COVID right now. And so I continued to do research, and it turns out that the University of Kentucky is doing a large scale trial of several different treatments, therapeutics for COVID, and one of them is Artemisia annua, the herb that Madagascar had been using as a prophylactic, and everybody was scoffing at them. Well, now University of Kentucky, there's been a small scale trial apparently on this, and so U of K they're running this ongoing trial where they bring things in and take them out again as they work or don't work. And you can go, if you have COVID, you can go enroll in this. And so they've added Artemisia annua, and they're doing a large scale test. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that does. And it's pretty cool because there's a company in Kentucky that I don't have the name of right in front of me, but they are I think it's an old tobacco farm, and they're growing fields of Artemisia annua and producing some sort of therapeutic treatment with it, which is what U of K is using for their trial. So I hope to have good.
Is this what happened to Jordan Peterson?
No, I don't think so.
He got the COVID.
Right. I read up on that, and I couldn't tell what they gave him, but I'm willing to bet somebody gave him a bunch of steroids.
Yeah,
that's what doctors do.
His daughter said they just gave him all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I'm betting they gave him a steroid. It worsened his lymphopenia, and now he's in trouble. Because doctors just hand out steroids for everything. It's like, oh man, I don't know how to fix you. Have some steroids.
Yeah, which is usually a good plan. Steroids are great.
They can be, yeah, but sometimes they get you into trouble.
Yeah, not when you have a specific effect. But we should the steroid thing. It's like there's all these like supplements and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, guys, just take steroids. If you're not worried about it, the thing that works is the steroids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like like all the supplements don't do anything. But these if you just roid up in human growth hormone, your skull's gonna get big.
Yeah.
Your skull's gonna get really big. It's not natural. It's like when Barry Bonds was hitting all of his home runs. You remember that? Is
that why Jocko Willenick has such a huge head?
Yes, that's why they all have huge heads. Like that's why Joe Rogan's head is bigger than his shoulders.
I didn't know it did that. Now that makes the world make so much more sense. All these people with these huge
you see
skulls.
These athletes or these tough guys with these giant skulls. It's because they're taking human growth hormone, which is one of the standard things you get when you start juicing. You get test and you get human growth hormone.
And Jocko, I'm not making fun of you. I actually really like your work. Please don't beat me up.
I'm making fun of Jocko, though.
He's going to come beat you
up.
He's
got a big head. He knows he's got a big head. And he also gets up at 4 a.m. every day.
Yeah.
He's like, so he can go attack his enemies or whatever.
Dude's like, fired
Jocko,
up.
Who's your enemies, though, Jocko?
Right.
Like, I don't think, you can get up at 6 and it'd be fine. You run a podcast for a living. You don't have to do that at any specific time.
I wish I had some. Do you think anybody wants to sign up to be my enemy?
Sure. Yeah, we'll get an enemy sign up sheet. Do you think? Now, I don't think I could beat Jocko in jiu-jitsu. My jiu-jitsu is not as good as his.
No, I imagine not.
I might outbox him. I don't know. We'll see.
If he lands a solid hook on you, man, just the weight of his arm would crush your head.
Well, how big is Jocko?
I don't think he's that tall, but he is a thick dude.
Jocko Willink size. I think he's 5'11". He's a manlet.
No, that is not a manlet. I at 5'8" am a manlet. Okay.
5'11".
Be correct in our terms.
It's like what? It says he's 235
Mm-hmm.
pounds. So
I think Jocko would smoke you. We'll be honest.
I don't know. I think we could have a good boxing match.
Yeah,
He's
he wouldn't smoke you immediately. I think you would hold up pretty well, but I think he would win.
Maybe. I mean, he was a Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably slightly better at swimming. I don't know. He's probably not as. I feel like I need to box Jocko Willink now,
Okay.
and I don't even care how it goes. I don't care if I get knocked out first 3 seconds.
You just need to do it.
It'd just be fun.
Well, I know.
The thing about Jocko is, but I need to make my head grow first, though.
Thicken your skull a little bit with some steroids.
Yeah, the problem with taking that stuff is then it messes your form up. Like I still remember when Barry Bonds was hitting his home runs, and people were like, "How's he doing it?" I'm like, guys, it's not normal for your head to grow 20% in your 30s. Like, his head has definitely gotten bigger. Look at this picture, and then look at this picture. His skull is like poofing out, and like he's clear. You guys are all gonna look silly when he tests because he's gonna pop positive for testing stuff.
Yeah,
because his head is so big.
Yep.
But yeah, people don't know the ins and outs of athletic drug use. We should maybe have an episode on that so people just. I knew a guy. I may have told this before. Did I ever tell you about the guy that with his he was a fighter and he did the baby oil?
Yeah. He oiled himself up. It's like they can't get traction, so they can't get traction.
Well, he did more than oil himself up. He would bathe for hours before his fight in baby oil to soak it into his skin.
Oh, weird. Is he? So he also shaved his whole body too, right?
He shaved his whole body, and then when he would sweat, he would just be sweating baby oil, and if people would try to grab him, they just slip off.
That's funny.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, I had a call come in right there. I forgot to mute my phone. It's very unfortunate.
That's okay. So your cocktails, your herbal cocktails, are gaining traction against COVID.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what University of Kentucky says. But I have a shelf full of that stuff just in case. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, the COVID stuff. I'm starting to despise Americans. Is that fair?
I mean, yeah. Sure, it's fair.
People are just so cowardly.
Yeah.
Like, there's one guy who was like, there was this guy talking about Ubers, and he was like, I just don't know if I could take an Uber.
Really?
Like, dude, what is your, what? And he was like, well, there could be a COVID patient in there. I'm like, why are you being such a bitch?
It's like a regular taxi. I mean,
well, I mean, he wouldn't take that either. There are people, you got to remember, there are people that are right now, there are millions of people in America that literally have not left their apartment in 4 months.
That is sad. It is really sad.
It's insane. And then you start to despise such people because of that level of like cowardice.
Well, if there's enough of them, society is going to collapse. And we'll go back.
Society is collapsing.
Right. And we're going to go back to the Stone Age if people don't just get back to doing normal stuff. It's like, okay, if you're worried about it, take reasonable precautions, but we all still have to make a life here.
I'm reminded of that proverb. There was some Greek guy who said he noted that those with the shortest weapons enlarge their borders.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, goes back to what me and number 15 were talking about, because the U.S. has all this faith in like its technology,
right?
They have no faith in like just manly virtue, and they.
We farmed out our manliness to technology and managerial technocracy.
Yeah, it was this quote, and he was like the tribes with the shortest weapons increased their borders, and it was because they were like, the people that relied on bows and arrows, which are for pansies, bows and arrows or crossbows. They were like, like, we'll be fine. We got these, and the guys that would just get up there and stab you with a dagger, because they were they had more skin in the game. Yeah. They were more willing to like run up there and have their guts eviscerated. And that is the thing that wins in the long term.
Yeah.
Because like we're like, oh, we'll just shoot them with our missile from pew 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 pew, drone strikes, pew pew pew, and they think they can just sit around and everyone can just hide in their apartment from a vaguely deadly virus,
Right.
and then still beat China in the South China Sea. Now, I know as I said that, I prefaced China's victory on their use of the longest range weapons, but so that's contradictory.
It's okay. Just roll with it.
Yeah, but I just like everyone has gotten so weak. It's like, why do you have anything? And here's the thing, guys: you got to stop trying to save America. America cannot be saved. Just now's the time. And I know this is something I say as an American patriot. Don't try to save America at this point. Just pillage America.
Build your own little America.
Well, yeah, build your own America, but also just pillage the current America. Because you look around at people and you're like, why do you have anything? Give me that. That's mine. I don't mean do anything illegal, but just like, like the other day.
Well, it's like build your own way of life. If the way of life that is prevailing around you is totally failing to function, then you have to build your own way of life. We talked about this on Boiler Room on Thursday. You can't farm out your existence to a dying system. And if you want to do that, you're going to be the guy holed up in his house for months because he thinks he's going to die of COVID. And at some point, if we don't all decide that we're okay with maybe getting and dying of COVID, society is going to collapse. And I'm not saying don't take precautions. Take precautions. That's fine. Everybody has risks they have to manage. But the point is manage it. But still live a life.
Well, I see people like they're walking down the street with no one around them in broad daylight wearing a mask. Yeah. It's like, what is your problem?
Right.
Why are you
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? And the rules that people go by are so nonsensical. It's like, we'll wear a mask in a corridor, but then when we sit down in the office, we'll take them off to talk.
Right.
And then you have to wear them when you're going up to get your food, but then when you sit down, you can take them off. And everyone's sitting down, so that's most people. And then none of this makes any sense inside any building with recirculated air, which is almost every building.
Yeah.
So none of it. It's more that people are going along so easily with nonsense and not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm like, well, then just give me your house. If you're that ridiculous, then just it's like when the Mongols. You know the story when the Mongols came into Baghdad. So the Muslims still talk about this because they were traumatized by it. There was an Islamic golden age of richness and like philosophy and learning and science, right? And everyone in Baghdad got very decadent. They were doing a lot. Everyone was just. They were outsourcing all their warfare to other people, just paying them money to do it. They were just sort of getting slovenly and lazy, all that stuff. And the Mongol hordes came down, and they just sort of rounded them all up in an easy fashion and started killing them all without much resistance, because they had, And then when the Mongol leader. He brought the king of Baghdad up, or the prince, or whatever it was, the satrap or whatever. And he brought him forward, and he was like, he was sitting in the king's palace, the Mongol leader, and he said, "Why do you have a golden plate?" And he just held it up to him. He's like, "Do you know how many warriors you could have spent this on? Do you know how many spears you could have made? Why do you have a golden plate?" And the Mongols almost felt bad for them. They were like,
"Yeah.
You guys are so weak, you can't be here on Earth. And we're going to help you leave.
Right.
We're just going to help you leave because why do you have a golden plate?" And I start to feel that when I look around at Americans, and I'm like, why do you have that nice, why do you like, but your body and your spirit and you're so decayed.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you have that? Why do you know how many other things you could have spent that on that would have strengthened you instead of like just you have a golden plate?
Why do you have a Wii Switch?
Yeah.
Why do you have a Tesla?
Yeah, but it's just like America has so much wealth And it's like, when you look at the people that hold it, and then the whole world is like, why do you have that? We're stronger than you are. And then at some point, it's like, if you don't want to do struggle, it's like, well, then you can't be on Earth, because that's what happens here.
I think that's part of it. It's the whole COVID thing. If you're hiding, you don't want to do struggle.
Right.
It's like sloth and cowardice are really closely aligned here.
They are. But yeah, remember that, guys. Think about that. Why do you have a golden plate? And then someone's going to sit there one day before they kill you and say, well, you just can't be here anymore because this is ridiculous.
May that day never come for any of our listeners.
Well, it will come for Chad Wolf, deportation specialist.
No, it won't. He's dude, he doesn't have any golden plate.
I just like saying his name.
Chad Wolf, deportation specialist, has a bunch of spears at his apartment. I guarantee it. Yeah. Big stack of them.
Right. a bunch of. He didn't spend his golden plate. He did his money on a golden plate.
No, he did not. Well, it's been fun. We'll talk to you next time, Sumo.
Okay. Everyone have fun out there. When the nuclear apocalypse happens, just look us up. I think I'm going to go to the Florida Keys.
Probably a good place to hang out.
When the bombs drop.
Mushroom cloud going up over a palm tree.
I can't decide between there and Twisp, Washington.
Comes from China.